Get ready to be moved by A Cake for Two, a gentle and deeply human story about two lonely young adults in a big city who, by sharing a simple birthday cake, discover a connection powerful enough to change everything. This story is perfect for anyone who wants to relax before bedtime, soothe anxiety, cope with insomnia or difficult nights, reconnect with human emotions and feelings of hope, feel comforted and quietly accompanied. If this story touches your heart, leave a comment or share it with someone who needs a little love today. Sometimes, a slice of cake and a little attention are all love needs to begin. In the vastness of the city that never sleeps, where skyscrapers cut through the sky and the quiet of the early morning is broken only by the distant hum of buses and the whistle of trains, two young souls wake up early every day to chase a dream that hasn't yet taken shape. Lucas is 21. He came from a small town, carrying a backpack and a promise to his mother, "I'm going to make it, Mom. For us." He works during the day at a small printing shop and studies at night, his eyes tired but full of faith. He lives in a cramped room overlooking a noisy avenue, but inside him lives a beautiful silence, the silence of hope. In the same city, just a few blocks away, lives Julia. She's also 21. Her days begin with the alarm ringing at 5:30 a.m. She works as a barista in a cozy cafe downtown and studies education in the evenings. Her dream? To help children just like she once was. In a rented room filled with the warm scent of fresh bread coming from the bakery downstairs, Julia keeps her grandmother's recipe notebook, scribbled on and stained with flour, as a way to keep the memory of home close. Both are alone. Both come from humble families. Both carry longing in their hearts. On that cloudy autumn Saturday, when the city seemed to breathe a little slower, Lucas went out to buy a small, simple gift for his sister's birthday, who lived far away. He wanted to send something symbolic by mail. Julia, meanwhile, took advantage of her day off to do something she loved quietly, walk through the mall, not to shop. She rarely could afford that, but to dream. She gazed at the storefronts with eyes that imagined a calmer life, a well-equipped kitchen, a floral dress, a lighter future. The city was already cloaked in darkness, but in some apartments, the lights still held on. Behind those windows glowing past 10 at night lived stories no one saw, stories of people who hadn't given up yet. In a cramped 8th floor room, Lucas finished the cold sandwich left from lunch and opened his old laptop, which stubbornly overheated. The fan buzzed insistently, and though his eyes were tired, they carefully scanned the online graphic design lessons. During the day, Lucas worked at a simple print shop, cutting paper, adjusting printers, and enduring complaints. But at night, it was as if a flame reignited inside him. He knew he was capable of more. He wanted to learn to create, to draw, to use colors to tell stories. In his backpack, there was always a notebook full of ideas and sketches, imaginary book covers, logos for companies that didn't exist yet, even chocolate wrappers he dreamed of seeing on store shelves someday. Across the city, on a quiet street where the scent of coffee lingered in the hallways, Julia studied too. Wearing floral pajamas and colorful socks on her cold feet, she wrote by hand in a worn notebook, lesson plan, "What does the butterfly teach children?" She studied education with a passion rooted in her childhood. She wanted to be the kind of teacher who listens, who welcomes, who makes a difference. During the day, she served customers kindly at the cafe, but at night, in the solitude of her room, she dreamed big. She read about teaching methods, inclusion, and games that spark imagination. Her room was simple, but on one wall hung a collage of paper cutouts, a colorful school, a drawn sun, and a phrase written in marker to educate us to plant hope where no one else sees a garden. Both of them studied. Both fought sleep, tight budgets, and homesickness. But something kept them going. Lucas thought of his mother, his younger brother who wanted to be a soccer player, and the proud smile she sent him in voice messages despite the poor connection. Julia thought of her grandmother, the little house with a porch where she grew up, and the promise she made when she left, "I will come back better." That night, they both fell asleep late, and unknowingly, they dreamed of the same smell, carrot cake fresh from the oven. It was a Saturday morning, and the city woke up lazy, with a sky covered in gray clouds that seemed to hide the sun on purpose. But for Lucas and Julia, this day was special. Though they lived far from their families, juggling work, studies, and bills, they were both turning 22 on the very same day. Lucas woke up to a voice message from his mother, "Happy birthday, my son. May God continue to bless you. Everything's fine here, but breakfast wasn't the same without you." He smiled with eyes watering. Opening the fridge, he found only a yogurt and half an apple. He sighed and thought, "Today, I deserve a cake." He decided to walk to the neighborhood bakery. It was small, but they had the best carrot cake with chocolate frosting he had ever tasted, even if it wasn't quite like his mother's. Meanwhile, Julia woke up to the neighbor playing Foro music too loud. She checked her phone, no calls. Just a message from her grandmother, with an old photo of her as a child, holding a piece of cake, her nose smeared with chocolate frosting. "Happy birthday, my little one. Don't forget to buy yourself a little cake, okay? Even if it's just for you." She smiled, though her heart felt heavy. She put on her favorite sweater, tied her hair up in a simple bun, and headed downstairs with the same thought as Lucas. "Today, I deserve a cake." And then fate, with all its sweet irony, prepared their meeting. At the small corner bakery, the doorbell rang twice within a minute. First came Lucas, hands in his pockets and shy eyes. Moments later, Julia entered, distracted by the breads until she caught that familiar smell. Freshly baked carrot cake, they both approached the counter at the same time. There was only one whole cake left in the display. The clerk, smiling kindly, said, "Last cake of the day. Just came out. Who's going to take it?" They looked at each other. And in that moment, everything seemed to slow down. He smiled, a little awkward. She did too. Lucas was the first to speak, scratching the back of his neck. "You can have it. Is it for you?" Julia hesitated, then replied, "Well, today is my birthday. I thought I'd celebrate alone, you know?" With a little cake, Lucas chuckled softly, surprised. "Really? What a coincidence. It's my birthday too." The clerk glanced between them and the cake, then back to them. "Look, that cake serves about 8 slices. How about sharing?" They both froze for a second. Then, as if reading the same thought, they smiled. Lucas answered, "Sounds fair. But only if we also share the bench over at the park." Julia laughed, feeling her heart beat in a new, light way. "Deal. But only if there's a candle." And so, On an ordinary Saturday, among gray clouds and the smell of cake, two strangers blew out a candle together. No promises. No plans. Just a simple moment, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something beautiful. The park bench was old wood, worn by time, but that late morning it felt like the most beautiful place in the city. Lucas held the bakery box carefully, while Julia pulled out a colorful star-shaped candle from her bag. "Do you always carry a candle in your bag?" he asked, laughing softly, with kind eyes. "No," she replied, fixing her hair. "But today, I knew I'd want to light one. Even if it was just for myself." Lucas looked at her like he recognized something he couldn't quite explain. "I'm glad you brought it. I never would have thought of that." They sat beneath a tree that let patches of sunlight dance on the ground. The candle was stuck in the middle of the cake like a silent totem of the coincidence that brought them together. "So?" Julia said. "One wish each?" "Sounds good," Lucas agreed. "But you have to close your eyes." They closed them, and for a few seconds, the world stopped. Lucas wished his mother could see him now, whole, calm, with someone by his side. He also wished for more days like this, with cake and no hurry. Julia wished for courage. Courage. To stay, to trust, to let someone in, even if only slowly. After blowing out the little colorful candle together, they looked at each other and smiled. "Do you always do this? Celebrate alone?" he asked, cutting the cake with an improvised spatula made from a napkin and a styrofoam lid. "Not always. But we hardly ever get to do things the way we want, right?" "Yeah. I know how that is." He offered her the first slice. "We do what we can." As they ate, they peeled back layers like the soft cake they shared. Julia said she'd wanted to be a teacher since she was 9. When a teacher read her a story about a girl who planted stars, Lucas talked about the print shop, the hidden drawings, and his dream of illustrating book covers one day. "Maybe someday you'll draw one of my books," she said, half joking, half hoping. "Maybe someday you'll teach at a school with a mural I made." He replied, in the same tone. Their eyes met once again, this time with less hesitation and a more comfortable silence. The clock passed without rush. The park began filling with children, bikes, and couples holding hands. But on that bench, in that little world between two slices of cake, they seemed to float outside of time. As they said goodbye, Lucas spoke first. "Thank you for sharing your cake, and your bench, and your time." "Thank you," Julia said, adjusting her bag strap. "I think this was my strangest and most beautiful birthday." "Mine too." They stood there, unsure whether to hug or just wave. In the end, they shared a shy, light, almost quick, but genuine, hug. Before turning the corner, she looked back. He was still there, watching 2.2 birthdays. Two strangers. One slice of life shared, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a feeling that didn't have a name yet, but was already living in their eyes. The following days passed like a gentle breeze after the rain, clear, but carrying the scent of something left behind. Lucas returned to work at the print shop. The machines hummed, papers piled up as always, but inside him there was a new kind of longing that he doodled more, dreamed more, and at night, while watching his lessons, he smiled quietly, remembering her laugh, half sweet, half nervous, like someone surprised by their own joy. Julia went back to her routine at the cafe and her studies. But something inside her had changed too. The words in her books felt more alive. The childish drawings on the coffee cup seemed more charming. She replayed their conversation in the park, the brief hug, his eyes when he talked about his mother, and she sighed, a deep sigh, like someone trying not to get attached. But she already was. Neither of them exchanged contacts that day. Maybe out of shyness. Maybe out of fear. Maybe because some meetings feel too magical to bring into everyday life. But the truth was, they both wanted to see each other again. They just didn't know how. On Wednesday afternoon, the sky threatened rain, and the air smelled the same as the day of the cake. Julia left her internship early and, on impulse, went to the bakery. She wasn't even hungry. But something pushed her feet forward. She walked in, looked at the displays. No carrot cake. They arrived about half an hour ago, miss. They were gone in a blink, said the attendant, smiling. Julia smiled back, disappointed though, and just as she turned to leave, she bumped into someone. "Oh, sorry," she said instinctively, barely looking. "It's okay," answered the now familiar voice. "But are you sure you're not following me?" She looked up. It was him, Lucas. And the smile came without asking permission. "I was going to ask you the same thing," she replied, laughing. "Trying for that last cake again?" "Actually, I came looking for you," he said seriously, but gently. Julia was silent for a moment. "I regretted not asking for your number," he continued. "I thought I might have let something good slip away." She looked down, bit her lip, then looked back up. "I thought about you every day too." There was silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full. Lucas pulled from his pocket a small napkin, folded several times. It was the same one from the park cake, where in the corner, he'd drawn two smiling faces and a candle between them. "I kept this just to remember that it really happened." Julia reached out, touched his hand, moved by the moment. "We can make it happen again." And there, in the middle of the busy bakery, with people coming and going, the smell of fresh bread and coffee all around, they shared their first kiss. Simple, light, real. 2 years had passed since that first cake was shared on the park bench. Lucas now worked at a small but colorful publishing house. His illustrations, once scribbled in the back of a worn-out notebook, had come to life on the covers of children's books. Every time he handed in a new project, he remembered the day she said, "Maybe one day you'll illustrate one of my books." And that day was coming. Julia had graduated. She taught at a cheerful little school on the north side of town, where the kids called her Miss Julia, with mouths still messy from snack time. Amid lesson plans and folders, she wrote small stories for her students, and for a secret project growing quietly in her heart, a children's book, illustrated by Lucas. They still lived in the same city, but now they lived together. In their first shared apartment, simple, with white walls and shelves made from painted crates, life was built from little rituals: fresh brewed coffee, sticky notes on the fridge, inside jokes, blankets on the couch, and every year, on the same day, they return to that bakery. They buy a carrot cake with chocolate frosting, topped with a silly candle. They'd split it in two. Sing happy birthday to each other, even if it was just the two of them in the kitchen, and then they'd look at each other, as if saying with their eyes, "We made it." At their most recent celebration, Julia arrived with a gift wrapped in paper decorated with hand-drawn sketches. Inside was a tiny yellow crochet baby shoe, and a note, "In a few months, the cake will be for 3. Lucas read it slowly. And then, he cried like someone who suddenly understands that love is a story that grows, slice by slice, and that's how a cake for 2 became a home, became a book, became a lap, became life, because sometimes, all we need is a park bench, a candle lit, and someone to share a piece of our day, and when love arrives quietly, between one bite and the next, it stays. It stays in your eyes, it stays in your memory, it stays in your heart. The end.